How to get a job offer from a Canadian employer. The biggest hurdle for most adults trying to immigrate to Canada is the job offer from a Canadian employer requirement. In our video, on the top 7 cheapest and fastest ways to immigrate to Canada, there is one common theme. 4 of these methods require a job offer from an employer. The others require admission to a Canadian school, to be from a select few countries, or to marry a Canadian. So how do you get a job offer from a Canadian employer? Getting a job offer from overseas. Most of us can't afford to travel just to network or to discuss hiring practices and future career opportunities, and most of us cannot afford international student tuition. Canada's universities can be expensive, or don't qualify to study. The majority of people have to look for a job offer from a Canadian employer from where they are living right now. This is absolutely the hardest part of coming to Canada, and unfortunately, there is no way of making it easier. Do you need a job offer to immigrate to Canada? Some people actually don't need a job offer to work in Canada. Those people can be divided into groups. Professions that do not require a work permit, certain self-employed occupations, certain skilled worker occupations, business owners and investors. However, if you're not in one of these groups, you need a job offer to work in Canada, even if your occupation is LMIA exempt. If you are even slightly unsure as to whether or not you need a job offer, work permit or LMIA, you should assume that you probably do require one or both of them. Getting the job offer. There are a number of ways of getting a job offer from a Canadian employer while you are overseas. Networking. Frankly, the easiest way of getting a job offer from a Canadian employer is by networking. Do you have relatives or friends in Canada? Does anyone you know well have relatives or friends in Canada? Can you make use of your fellow countrymen in Canada to get your foot in the door? Knowing the right people is unfortunately the easiest way of securing that job offer. Whether or not that job offer is any good depends on whether or not your future employer can get a positive labour market impact assessment, LMIA, formerly LMO. An LMIA is permission from Canada's Ministry of Employment and Human Development Canada to hire a foreign worker for a job for which no Canadian citizen or permanent resident can be found. And that's where knowing the right people will not help. LMIAs are issued based on the needs of the Canadian economy. So if your friend knows a guy who needs a new administration assistant, but there are tons of unemployed administration assistants in that area of Canada, you're likely out of luck. Agencies. One of the best bets is to contact multiple recruiting agencies, particularly if you can find one or more focused on your profession. Employers are increasingly relying on external hiring companies or headhunters to find talent. Usually these headhunters are paid by the employer, so avoid companies that ask you to pay for them for their services. Canada's live-in caregiver immigration program is mostly driven by employment agencies. There are many agencies that are oriented towards foreign workers, but there are many more that are not. You should be careful when selecting an employment agency. Canvassing employers. You can always cold call or cold call email employers who might be interested in hiring someone with your skills. Or you can look at employer websites for job postings, as some employers see value in people who take initiative. If you are a great candidate, the employer may not care that you're overseas. Online resources. The simplest way, but probably the least likely to succeed, is to consult job sites online, as any Canadian would who was looking for a job. Job Bank. Job Bank is the federal government's job website, and it's long been the way Canadians find jobs online, as it's free for both employers and candidates to use. It is probably as close to an authoritative list of all available jobs in Canada as you will be able to find online. However, plenty of employers do not list their jobs on JobBank, particularly if they're using a headhunter or a different online resource. LinkedIn. The social network geared towards professional networking also has a job section, but even if you're not going to use LinkedIn to apply for a job, you should sign up and create a profile if you haven't done so already. Many employers use LinkedIn as a way of vetting prospective clients, so it would greatly help to any job application of yours if it's backed by a LinkedIn profile. Indeed and other private job sites. There are many other job sites in Canada, two of the most famous being Monster. Be sure you use the Canadian site, and Workopolis. However, you might want to try Indeed instead, again the Canadian site, as it compiles job listings from Monster, Workopolis and many other job sites, meaning that you only have to search in one place. There are many other online Canadian job sites, but if you use Indeed, you're likely to have all the major ones covered. Can't find a job. What if you can't find a job through any of these means? Well, unfortunately, that is the surest way to get to Canada if you do not qualify to immigrate as a permanent resident. If you cannot find a job offer, you can try to get accepted into Canadian university or college, but that is extremely expensive even if you qualify. You can try to upgrade your education overseas to see if you can later qualify for the skilled worker or skilled trade streams. Or you can save lots and lots of money and try to come as a business immigrant in a few years or decades. Getting a job offer in Canada. Obviously, everyone looking to move to Canada does not already live in Canada, but sometimes getting to Canada first is the best way of getting a job. There are a few ways of doing this. Visiting Canada as a tourist, studying in Canada. Looking for work on a temporary resident visa, TRV. As a visitor to Canada, you are not allowed to work, and if you did work, you could make yourself inadmissible in the future. But you can plan a holiday to Canada and check out the work situation on the side. There is nothing to stop you from networking at parties or with family and friends, or from canvassing some businesses about their interest in hiring foreign workers, or even speaking to HR experts about resume standards, salaries, and other useful information. However, you need to travel to Canada for legitimate tourist reasons. If you show up at the port of entry and say you're here to inquire about jobs, you will likely be denied entry. The exception to this is if you are making an exploratory visit as part of preparing to apply as a business immigrant for a provincial nominee program. But those immigrants do not need job offers as they are trying to become employers in Canada. So you shouldn't carry a resume or letters of introduction on you when you enter Canada. If you want to have one with you, leave it in the cloud. Once you have made the right contacts, you can see about arranging a job offer while you're overseas, and even encourage your prospective employer to apply for a Labour Market Impact Assessment, LMIA. But you will have to leave Canada before you can apply for the work permit. And remember, you are absolutely not allowed to work in Canada without a work permit. It is illegal. Working as a student. Once you have been accepted to study in Canada and have applied for a study permit, it's time to start thinking about working. As a student, you have 3 opportunities to get a job in Canada: on campus, off campus, after graduation. You can work on your university or college's campus, either directly for the institution or for a private company with a location on campus, without getting a work permit. This means you don't need a job offer before you come. You can apply for these jobs in person, at their locations in most cases. And as of June 1st, 2014, international students are now allowed to work in more places than ever before, as student work permits have been phased into study permits, meaning that study permit holders are now automatically allowed to work off campus. However, working while you're a student is still subject to strict restrictions, particularly around working hours. Students can only work 20 hours a week during the semester. During break periods, Christmas, summer, and reading week, students can work up to 40 hours per week, provided they're not taking classes in the summer. You can look for your job once you come to Canada, either by canvassing local employers or through online resources. You don't have to worry about the job offer. Canada allows most graduates of Canadian educational institutions to obtain post-graduation work permits, provided you studied in Canada for at least 8 months. You can only obtain post-graduation work permits if you're graduating from a Canadian educational institution. You can find a job for your post-graduation work permit the ways anyone else finds a job in Canada, unless you're able to keep working for the employer you had while a student.